Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am here today to try to explain the map and the layout of the building from Five Nights at Freddy's sister location. So, here is the map that I have kind of put together. But before I go over everything, let me explain where I got all of these different information. So, the base map that all the text is put on top of, that is originally from the mini game that you do in the breaker room, where you have to keep restarting the different power sections for the different parts of the building. And I was watching Markiplier's video. That's how I went through this information. And you can time when each different area turns on and then match that up with each section. So that's how I got the names for most of these areas. The other way that I got the names is simply just from watching the game, so you can actually get the main core areas. But Observation 1 and Observation 2, you get those names off of the Restart Power Games little tags where each one of them is labeled. Besides that, you also have to look at this other map here, this blue map, which comes from the extras. That will also give you a basic layout of all the different places and their exact names. Besides that, you also can see that there's all of these kind of extra little shaded out areas. So I want to actually go into detail of what each of the map areas are. So we'll start out at the elevator, just start out with the basics. So we start out at the elevator, that's where we always start. Then we go through a vent into the central control module. From there, if you look to your left, you see the Ballora Gallery, and on the far side of the Ballora Gallery is the breaker room, which is where you do the mini game, where there's Funtime Freddy with the Bonnie hand puppet back there. To the right is the Funtime Auditorium, where Funtime Foxy is, and on the other side of the Funtime Auditorium is where Parts and Service is, which is where you do all the repairs. On the top side of Funtime Auditorium is where the private room is for the alternate ending, and on the bottom side is where the scooper room is, but we'll get into more details on those. But back to the control module, if you head up through the vent on the top, you head into Circus Control, which you can then view into Circus Gallery. In the front of the room is where the hidden little area is, where you hide yourself and pull that area shut. Now, there is Observation 1 and Observation 2, which we don't actually know anything about. We just kind of have to accept that they exist, but we don't actually really get to see or interact with them very much. But we do know that there's the scooper room on the bottom side of Funtime Auditorium, and we know for a fact that there is the main scooper room, which based on this map, it shows two sections to the room. I imagine the top square that's closer to Funtime Auditorium is the actual place where the scooping takes place, where you would actually see the animatronics getting their parts pulled out, whereas the other half of the room is the part where we see the animatronics observing us as we got our innards scooped out. So we imagine that's the part on the other half of the glass. Now, there is those lines that go from Parts and Service to the scooper room. The question is that a vent or is that a passageway? We know that we come in through Funtime Auditorium, and they claim that it's a maintenance hatch or a vent or something like that during the actual game. That's what the voiceover says, that AI that guides us through the whole thing says that. So it's not the main entrance. So I'm guessing that those lines are actually the main entrance that leads into there, but I cannot be certain. So those are kind of question mark areas. Besides that, when you go up to the other side of Funtime Auditorium, that is where the private room is. So the private room, you notice that one small square, that's where the actual private room is. That's where you are sitting with the metal fan, and you get to access the cameras. The camera locations I've marked on the map, which I got once again from watching Markiplier's video. You can then see there's a hallway on each side. There is what appears to be some kind of storage room, which is where Cam 3 is. Cam 4 also appears to be a storage room, but I cannot be certain. and Cam 6 and 7 seem to be in one larger room. I can't be certain, but those lines that come out of the top of the big room where Cam 6 and 7 are, I believe you can see a vent in Cam 7, but I'm not 100% certain, but I believe that's a vent that leads up to where Observation 2 is. Now, Observation 2 has a very similar layout to the private room and the camera section, but it is a little bit different in the sense it doesn't have those two small side rooms. Instead, it has one larger room up at the top. Then we go over to where Observation 1 is. So that's Observation 2. Observation 1 over to the left top corner of the screen. If you look at it, there seems to be a vent that leads to the circus gallery, but I can't be certain. As well as one large room, one passageway heading down, one long one heading back, and then up and around into 4 larger rooms. Once again, we don't get to really see much on this, but I do have an idea as to what it could potentially be. Both Observation 1, Observation 2, and that area that's unmarked in the bottom left corner that we don't actually get a name to. I have an idea as to what that could be as well. But heading down there to that bottom left corner, we do see a vent that leads from Ballora Gallery straight down to the left and then up into a long hallway with 4 connected rooms to it. So, what could these different areas be? Well, I have an idea. If you look at each of the sections in comparison to different layouts of the various Five Nights at Freddy's games that have come before this, they all kind of correspond to different areas. So if you look at Observation 2, it actually lines up very well with the original Five Nights at Freddy's. It's not an exact replica, but it does line up fairly well. You have the room with the white dot, which is where the player would be positioned. That's your starting area. And remember those white squares. Those white squares actually correspond to starting areas in each of the different games. So that white square would be you. There's a hallway on each side, and then there's one large room, which would correspond to where the party room with the stage would be in the original Five Nights at Freddy's. If you go to Observation 1 versus Observation 2, back to Observation 1, it corresponds with the mini games in Five Nights at Freddy's 4 when you look at it. So those 4 big squares are the house that you live in. So the white square is your room where you start. The room right above it is that main room. Over to the right is where you see the pieces of Mangled, and then you go out, and then you go down, across, and up. Those correspond with the actual pathway you take while walking around, and then up above that, you see that one big room, which corresponds to what we assumed is Fredbear's Diner, where you actually see the bite happen, and that corresponds with the one big building with that we would have there. So that corresponds to the mini game of the original location. Then in the bottom left corner, you see what could correspond to 2 things. One, it could correspond to Five Nights at Freddy's 2, where you're sitting at the end of a long hallway and there are rooms on each side. It could also correspond to possibly the corridor where you play with the plushy Springtrap Bonnie in Five Nights at Freddy's 4, but I believe it has a stronger correlation with Five Nights at Freddy's 2. So the question is that just an Easter egg, or does that actually tie into anything? I'm not 100% sure. All I know is those white dots each correspond to the location of the player in those respective games, and then you also see that the maps line up fairly well. But I can't be 100% certain on that. I'm not really sure. But those are the general thoughts I've gotten from looking at this map so far, and hopefully this map can be useful to other people who are trying to piece some information together, and we'll see how this all goes, and hopefully we get some real good theories coming out soon. Otherwise, I hope you guys enjoyed watching and think that there's some merit to my ideas. And if you have any ideas, let me know in the comments down below. I'm always interested to hear other people's theories. But I guess thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.